don't know.
We're live. Yeah, we had to use the hoe instead of music because Facebook gets mad at us. We get reported for any music that we use now. Apparently,
now we got a hoe horn.
We just have to use the hoe horn. Hopefully, nobody gets mad at us for that.
We're pro hoe here.
Suicide. Yeah, we're pro hoe. Welcome to Suicide and Stuff, the most professional podcast about suicide and stuff. So, Dad, do we want to do our rating now that we've gotten started?
What rating? This rating?
We're rated R for language, terror, and some disturbing images because obviously we started out strong. Okay. I am Jess Stohlmann-Rainey, and I work in so-called Denver, Colorado, which is originally Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, and Sioux land. White people came and stole it from them and then really destroyed communities. And now that's directly contributing to suicide in Indigenous populations all over colonized areas today. So I think it's important to recognize that starting out. I do crisis work and consulting and like general rabble rousing and stuff around suicide and things and stuff. And I
nice correction.
Huh?
Nice correction.
Yeah. And I'm really excited to have our guests today, but we're going to have Des introduce herself first.
I hate introducing myself. I'm Des. I run a series of portraits and stories of suicide attempt survivors called Live Through This. You can look at those portraits and stories at livethroughthis.org. I am broadcasting from so-called Philadelphia, land of the Lenape people. They were also terrorized and murdered and stuff. So, yay. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Singer. I am I'm so delighted to be here. And, I'm in Evanston, which is, the lands of the Ojibwe and Potawatomi and Odawa people. And there are actually several other nations that sort of are around the area. And the, Evanston is a place that I have learned a lot about in the last 5 years, including it was sort of ground zero for the temperance movement, which was central to prohibition, which works so well. And I also learned that the temperance movement was key in the in populating the suffragette movement. And because of the small but mighty suffragettes who were politically astute and the very large temperance movement, they joined forces, and it was one of the things that led to the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, white women the right to vote. So
the white ones.
The white ones must be very explicit and clear about that. So
yeah, white women have
my
been.
friend Taylor calls us the hueless ones.
Yes, melanin deficient. There you go.
So tell us about why you're interested in suicide and like some of your work, things like that.
So when so I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, and I went to T.C. Williams High School, which is famously known as the high school in Remember the Titans. And Denzel Washington played Coach Boone. Coach Boone was my driver's ed coach. And it was a big high school, and in my I think in '86 or '87, they put on the play Ordinary People. And I was in the play, and it was the first time that I was really introduced to this intersection of suicide, schools, families. And they had a social worker that came and did debriefings after every performance, sort of Q&A with the audience and the cast. And that was really my first experience with a professional mental health person. And so, fast forward several years, I finished my MSW in '96, and I got a job working on a mobile crisis unit for children and adolescents called the CAPE team, Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Emergency Team. And I learned how to do suicide risk assessments and brief short-term stabilization therapy for kids. And I did that for several years, transitioned into home-based family therapy, which again was like our primary referral. And so professionally, in terms of social work and suicide, like that's where I started, like that intersection. And it's just, it's been something that I have been really passionate about ever since I started, in part because people were, my colleagues outside of, the CAPE team, social workers in the community, they just looked at suicide risk assessment for kids and adults as something that they were like, no, I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? Like, I'm just going to call, the police, or I'm going to send them to the hospital. Like, it's not my thing. And I was like, dude, you can't. Like, it's not, first of all, it's not right. And second of all, it's not helpful. So I became really passionate about it. And so that's how I got interested in it.
All right. And so now most of your career has been doing that, right? That intersection stuff in that intersection.
Yep.
What keeps you connected to it?
Well, so when I decided to go back for my doctorate after being, direct practice for many years, I learned something interesting about doctoral programs, which is that you have to specialize. You have to pick something. And now so here is sort of, the mind bender, which is that when you are a practitioner, you have to be a generalist.
Yeah.
You're going to work with somebody who is struggling with childhood sexual abuse at 10 o'clock, who got suspended for school and has a diagnosis of ADHD at 11 o'clock, and then somebody who's in a suicidal crisis at 12 o'clock. And you can't be like, sorry, that's not my area of expertise. And so I was used to being a generalist. And I thought, I'm going to get a doctorate. I'm going to teach. I'm going to do research on all of these different things. And I was told no.
You may not.
You will not. And then eventually somebody explained it to me in a way that made sense, which was, I had spent years becoming an expert in suicide risk assessment, in working with families of suicidal kids, in coordinating services, and sort of understanding the world of clinical social work and suicide prevention. And what she said was, look, we're just saying that you need to take some time to do that as a researcher, right? We're not saying you can't do other things, but you can't be an expert in everything all at the same time. So it's good to focus.
Yeah.
And so I decided to focus on suicide as my area of scholarship, which made perfect sense. And decided to, in fact, the whole reason why, after this whole conversation, the reason why I decided to go back was to learn was to develop family-based interventions for suicidal kids, because when I decided to go for my MSW or my PhD, there weren't any, right? And I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I eventually learned that doing intervention research is like not my bag. So
it's like fucking impossible.
Yeah.
Dez is here to lighten the mood with the hell horn.
Well, it's impossible. And also, like, you know, the thing that so the thing that I love about social work and being a social worker and working with people. And when you are running a clinical trial, you are not working with people, you're managing people. You're talking with grant officers and biostatisticians and blah blah blah. And I was just like, oh dude, I do not want to do that. So yeah.
And like, I don't know, we haven't really gotten like the best suicide interventions from all of our RCTs that we've run over time. Like, we're not awesome at it in suicidology. We try, but yeah. So I think that was a smart call to not go straight into the intervention research. So what are like some of the places that social work and suicide intersect? Because I think like you talked about it as sort of this specialization, and I think it is, but I think suicide really sort of permeates social work, or it ought to, if we're doing social work effectively.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about social work is that, ideally people are trained in their MSW programs to have this micro, meso, macro lens, right? To see things at a policy level, a community level, the individual and family level, and I appreciate that perspective. Now, I acknowledge that in the moment, it is hard to focus on the needs of a suicidal kid and their family and simultaneously address what might be happening in the community that will exacerbate whatever issues there are. So I'm not saying that social work trains people to do all of those simultaneously, because they do require different skills and different timelines and things like that. But when you're a social worker, the skills that you learn, you could easily get a job working in a shelter, a community mental health agency, in a hospital. Obviously, there's job specific things, but like the basic frame is the same. And in all of those places, you're going to find folks that are questioning whether or not this is a world that they want to stick around in. And so I agree. Social work doesn't do a great job of training people in suicide risk assessment or intervention. And yet we do it all the time. And I mean,
it's anything.
There are some really classic PowerPoints that social workers get access to, bathtubs, all sorts of things. But but no.
Oh gosh.
Let's see what I can do here.
Jess, are you going to show some of your PowerPoints from school? Jess is actively experiencing some of the ways that people unfortunately talk about suicide in some academic programs. I just think like social work is not alone in that, right? Like,
right.
I have seen from all kinds of mental health disciplines, people using information that I'm like, I don't even know if that was ever like information that people tell. I think you like made that up. You heard it on a TV show or something, and then you put it into your curriculum and your like PsyD program or whatever. Like, people do some weird things, and the disconnection between the practice of suicide prevention and and suicide prevention research, and then the rest of the mental health field is so that chasm is big and really confusing.
Yeah.
Like for me anyway, it's like how is this information available and people in an academic space? Because like it is available to people in academic spaces, and they're just like fucking it up. As opposed
Or
to
just
like
not.
for the general public, they're not always available. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I don't like this look of this slide over. Wait, this
it's
thing?
weird.
I don't know what's happening. Anyway, can we discuss sad persons here?
Sure.
This was a real thing?
Yes.
Sad persons?
Yeah, what is this?
Oh yeah. Okay, so Des, do you want to explain it, because you were recently trained in this apparently?
He actually, it was in his slide deck, but he passed it. I don't know if he knew that I was going to lose my mind on him, because I was already real pissed off by the time that slide came around. I found it in the slide deck later, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so sad persons was this mnemonic that was developed, was it Patterson, back in the day, and
like what day? Like
I think it was back
born.
maybe the early 90s. Anyway, the idea was that
83.
83. Okay. Oh yeah. That makes sense. So the idea was that you would look at these risk factors and you would add up all of these risk factors, and the higher the number, the higher the risk. And
what? You added it?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's like the worst version of a checklist.
Yeah. So checklist. So you would add up the sad persons, and it's a mnemonic, and I have to say, like, honestly, it's not the worst mnemonic in the world. Like,
I'm gonna kick you out of here.
I'm not saying it's like that it's actually helpful clinically. I'm just saying, like, if you don't know anything, like, being able to remember that, like, you should assess for, the E is ETOH, right? Alcohol, right? And do they have a plan? They say organized plan, but like, have they thought through, like, just these little things that can be helpful? But the research has actually shown that sad persons is not helpful.
Okay.
Not only conceptually is it not great, but actually when people are trained in sad persons, they do worse. So the fact that it's up there is bad. And sad persons isn't the only one that is. That is hilarious. I love the scroll. There are, there's is path warm is another mnemonic.
I know, but who would remember that's about suicide?
Right.
What?
And also,
I don't remember what they all mean, and I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, and also, shown that it is not particularly helpful. So,
Yep.
So mnemonics. I mean, there's some value in sort of having these shorthands, but By the way, I'm just noticing comments. I completely wasn't even seeing this.
We can see the comments.
Oh my God, Shelby and Joelle and like John, and
Shelby.
Sad persons is like dare.
Oh my God, Shelby.
Like dare.
Oh my God.
That is amazing. Sade. Hey Sade, I don't know if you're still there. Sade and I knew each other back in Philly. Yeah. Well, so this is a really good point, right? So, somebody learns John, I hope that you look that up and copy that, because if you were able to pull that literally out of your brain and type it, that would be terrifying.
The rain, huh? I think it came out of his ass.
Somebody.
So so you learn something like this, and what happens in academia, and here's what I think is, the a response to your question about like how are academics, messing this up, which is that when you have those PhD letters behind your name, or you are expected to stand up in front of a class and be the sage on the stage, then there's a pressure to deliver something. And so people end up delivering what it is that they have. And there's an assumption that if somebody wrote about it, then it must have passed muster, right? It must have been valid and reasonable. And so you share it, right? I can't tell you the number of times I have, told people about the Cage assessment. I honestly, like, I've never actually looked into it to see if it, like myself, I've never myself dived into the research to find out if it does what people say it does, So I do it too, but I think that must be one of the reasons why academics end up repeating stuff that those of us in the know are like, no.
But it can get like published over and over and over again, which is really fucked up and shocking, and like, but then it's not when you remember the like capitalism part of education, which means it's a good time for a costume change, probably.
Hey,
dun,
get naked, girl.
Oh,
capitalism. Is a death cult. So
yeah, baby.
You're welcome, everyone.
That's amazing.
But like, really, there's this I think there's this financial investment too that comes with some of this stuff. Is like things that we know are moderately or not effective are still, we've invested so much money into them. So we're all kind of wrapped up in using them. And it just perpetuates itself.
Yeah.
I can't believe the hell horn didn't go off that entire time. It was.
Look, guys, I can only do so many things here. Shit.
Well,
get my hoe horn out.
So John, John wrote about, these papers that he's had to write about, using Is Path Warm. One of the things about research is that it does take a while.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say you have these risk factors and then somebody's like, oh, well, let's evaluate it. I mean, it could take 3 or 4 years for somebody to be like, bad, don't do it. But then it's like 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is terrible, because 3 or 4 years is not that long in academia. And it is nightmarishly long in real life.
Yeah. It's almost like there should be something else that we could do besides just doing research, like ask people who have lived experience with things about their experiences with them.
Sorry, what? No.
Nah, I don't know about that. I mean, like, what do they know? No. Do they have degrees, Jess?
I don't think they have insight, into their own experiences.
They're not actually experts.
Yeah, right. So I won't get too far onto that soapbox yet. Now, I probably will again at some point, but I want to sort of like steer. Huh?
In 5 minutes,
in 5 minutes in our beef corner, we can talk about that more. So we've kind of like meandered around some of the things that we said we were going to talk about. This is sort of how it always goes. We just like talk. But I want to ask about how you think social work principles are applied sort of broadly in like we teach people principles about social work in social work school. And then how do people really learn how to practice and live those values, and who is like monitoring that they are, and how do we, like, as a field, if I were a social worker, but I'm not. So how do you all as social workers hold each other accountable and call each other in about that? What's that like?
I cry a lot.
And she makes people cry a lot. So there's that.
Yeah.
It's, it's we call it tearful intervention. So okay, so they I don't know, Des. I mean, I am actually. I know that I'm supposedly the guest here, but like we all know each other and hang out anyway. So I'm actually really curious on your take on the this idea of social workers and accountability, and the kind of the ethical principles, and then how they play out. I could speak for hours on this, but I would just love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, Des, you better put the beef up in the background.
The
seats were already there. I mean, this is what your beef is, isn't it?
Oh no, I have specific beef. No, that's in the foreground. Excuse me. Hold on.
Okay.
I have background beef.
Background beef. Okay.
Oh yeah.
The foreground beef. I think my feedback on that is short. The ethical code exists. It's nice. I like it. It resonates with me. Nobody fucking pays any attention to it in practice. It's just like a thing we read once, and then we were all like, bye, got shit to do. I don't.
Yeah.
That's my professional feedback on how we're doing at applying the ethical code.
I think people don't make time for conversations about ethics in practice, even though it's like it is the thing we should be talking about. If you have ethics, then you can't make bad decisions if you understand your ethics in practice.
Right. Well, and I think that's a really, really good point, which is like there's this idea of kind of right practice, right? So actually practicing doing right by your clients and just practicing ethically is one way of doing it, and then sort of doing what you do, and then like trying to figure out how to squeeze that into the NASW Code of Ethics is something that a lot of people do. Now we have a situation down in Texas where the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners is straight up being evil, ableist, homophobic, transphobic, just everything. And I lived in Texas for 11 years, and I will say some of the most amazing individuals I've ever met and worked with are from Texas. So this is not a blanket statement about people in Texas, but the government in Texas, and the fact that the State Board of Social Work Examiners would say that it is optional. Social workers do not have to provide services to people with disabilities or based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Not only is it a violation of the Code of Ethics, but it is, even if it weren't, like, it's just wrong. Like, it's wrong. Any profession, this is my beef. If you're a professional, you can't say no to working with somebody, which means, and this is the flip side, which means that I can't say no to somebody that I disagree with, right? Like, it's my job as a professional to provide services. And by the way, I if you're looking at this, like, if you're hearing me say this, you didn't know about this, like, just Google social workers Texas and it'll pop up. It's a huge firestorm right now. But I think that, I think that one of the ethical principles is dignity and worth of the person. And this is something that actually in 96.
No.
90, What?
They blocked our video.
How?
I told you this was going to happen.
We didn't even play a song.
Okay.
Facebook, but it's on
Talking.
Periscope.
On Periscope.
Wait,
It's
I don't
still on
understand.
Twitter, right?
I literally
Yeah, we're on Twitter.
I don't understand, man. What is...
They're just mad that we're talking about suicide. I
No,
don't know what it is. I can't figure
They
it out.
flagged us once, and now I think they're just going to flag us forever.
Yeah. So, at this point, so that means we can't see chat coming in from Facebook or...
We'll see it from Twitter. So I'm going to just tell everyone to get on Twitter.
Okay.
Okay, you're going to do it? Cool.
I will do it. Yeah.
30 minutes in.
Assholes.
Earlier than usual. Usually it's about 46 minutes
I
in.
know.
It was right after we started bagging on Texas.
It was. Maybe that was too far, but my fuck the police thing was fine.
Oh my God.
I don't think that's true.
Capitalism.
Hey.
Death cult. Yeah, gross. Okay, well that's annoying. I'm gonna post the link.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm looking for the NASW Texas link. So keep talking about it. Give us context.
Yeah. So basically, what's going on with that is that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, signed legislation that made basically like you can't force people to work with people that they disagree with, you know. And then there was a reorganization of the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners, like literally the people who were on it, that was supposedly to kind of streamline things and modernize, but actually ended up giving the governor way more power over the board. And so what I've read is that the board had to update their statute or their regs based on what the state of Texas did, because this is the Texas State Board of Social Work. So my understanding is that actually this should also have shown up in psychology and, you know, couples and family therapy and all these places, because they're all the same thing. Now, what's true is that there is also something in the legislation in Texas that says that the NASW Code of Ethics trumps, sorry for the use of the word Trump, the whatever is in the Texas code. And so it is still unethical for social workers to refuse services because of the NASW Code of Ethics. So yes, Jess, I totally agree. And Des, social work holds up this Code of Ethics as this super important document. Oftentimes we ignore it. There are times like this where it is valuable to have when you have one system fighting another system. We can point to the Code of Ethics and say, no, this is why it is unethical for social workers to refuse services. Now, that does not even get to the whole issue of having social workers out there that think they should be able to refuse services. Like, that's a different level of messed up. And it actually gets back to one of the issues of CSWE, which is the accrediting body, Council on Social Work Education. They accredit schools that actively discriminate against LGBTQ folk. And the party line is essentially, it's like, it's better to keep your enemies close, right? Or closer. We disagree with it. It's not consistent with our Code of Ethics, but if we don't accredit these schools, then we have zero oversight, zero ability to have any influence. I mean, personally, I think they should just cut the cord. Like, I'm not down with CSWE giving any stamp of approval to that, but yeah.
I think one of the hard parts of like, we serve everyone because that's how crisis work is in general. And we work with tons of social workers on the crisis line. I think one of the things that often people don't expect is like that you are going to work with people whose crises are centered around views that directly conflict with your values, and it's really, really hard, and they're going to say really terrible things and maybe terrible things about you. And So that's like this growth point for our staff right now, and probably all crisis workers, because of the climate of things going into election season. It's that stuff is really, really heightened, and I struggle with figuring out the best ways to help people do that effectively, as I think we all do, right? But it's, to me, it's like the struggle it's a struggle that's worth having, because I believe that, like, I believe that we need a crisis system so that there's something to help catch people when all of the other systems are breaking apart because they suck. And that means that, and like, not that our system is awesome all the time either, but I do think that means that you work with folks that you might have a, yeah. And so Joelle works with me. She's saying focus on the feelings, which is what we talk about all the time, is like pull out of that content of what is upsetting people or getting people into that sort of heightened state, and then we can connect with the feelings, because that's the space where we can understand each other a lot of the time. But it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And I way back in the day, I did this like personal growth weekend workshop. Used to be called Life Training. It's now called More to Life. But one of the lessons that I learned in that weekend that was so powerful was that a lot of the words that we use just obscure what's actually going on, and that if you can just focus on what's sort of the basic core truth about a situation, which feelings are true, right? Then there is a connection between people, because I can connect with someone feeling so scared that they're immobile.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that feeling. I can connect with that. But if they're like, oh my God, I can't believe Biden's going to win, or I can't, like, if the story around it, suddenly then I get wrapped up in the story. And that is really hard for me to engage in. So I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, let's do actual beef corner now.
Okay.
Everyone bring your beefs.
Who wants to go first? Oh, wait. Let me go and do the I don't know. We got a video. Should I do? Let's do Doja Cat. We haven't done Doja Cat.
I like Doja Cat better. Yeah.
Yes.
Beef corner.
Doja Cat.
She's wonderful.
Moo. I wish we could have the audio too.
Oh yeah, but then we'll get kicked off of everything.
Oh my God. I'm so sick of getting kicked off of things for no fucking reason.
Holy shit.
Okay, but wait. Jonathan needs to know. Warner Music Group is the one that keeps flagging our shit. I used to work for Warner Music Group. It's like they're getting me back for leaving to go serve burgers.
Is that why it's called the beef corner?
No, Leia did that. Sorry. I know. I don't know why Leia did that, but she did that.
Yeah, Leia named it beef corner. I don't know.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's such bullshit. Like having, having this bevy of lawyers, or this gaggle of lawyers at music companies flagging things like, this podcast. It's terrible. It's like, why?
I know.
Right?
I have to enlist my lawyer friend to say something lawyery back to them, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A week later, we'll find out it's fine.
Who's got a beef? Oh my God. Who wants to start?
You guys go first, because I have to work out my beef in images.
Jonathan, do you want to start with your beefs?
No, why don't you start? I'm gonna I will sit and bask in the glory of your beef.
Oh, well, my current beef, I mean, I don't know. I have a lot of beefs all the time. I am just really upset that I have to
Wait, what's happening? What's he doing? Something happened to me.
Yep. I think you just froze for a second, Des. Are you still there? Well,
I think she might be frozen.
Yep. So
I think.
am upset about having to choose between a guy who struggles to put a sentence together in a super cop and a like serial rapist with like some kind of demon monster for our president and vice president situation. It is like, what is happening? This is the worst timeline. We are in the worst timeline. That's my beef. It's worst timeline, I think. I don't even know how to think about anything right now. It all seems like surreal and bizarre. And I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and it's going to be like a regular year or something. And it's just going to be like mildly fucked, like just generic fucked up. Like capitalism is bad. Things aren't always cool. Racism is rough. But then it's not. It's just like, well, what could we do worse? So that's my beef.
Yeah. I think, one of my beefs is, my current beef is the fact that there is so much like bullshit around listservs and stuff that have nothing to do with building lives worth living or preventing suicide. That that sort of the suicide prevention community is spending an inordinate amount of time on things that have nothing to do with things that will help people in the long run.
We're just like wolves devouring each other. It's great.
Yeah, and it's very much like there's this sort of like scarcity mentality that just gets prompted, and
like y'all can make like 15 of your own listservs. It's not hard. Google.
Make some listservs, like work with us to have somebody take over the listserv. Like I just honestly like, and a related beef is the this myth that leadership at the American Association of Suicidology is this sort of like secret cabal of powerful people that is like hands in these major like pots of money and like trying to and is like shaping like what happens. And it's just like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention just announced $5.1 million in research grants, which is literally twice the entire budget of the American Association of Suicidology. Like what they are giving out in research grants is twice the entire budget, which includes the conference for everything that the American Association of Suicidology does. And yet we have people who are again not focusing on suicide prevention or postvention because they are just like out of their minds with this idea that AAS is just I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, that's my current beef.
I have never cared less about listservs than I have recently. It turns out it's just like amazing. Yeah. Des.
I care a lot about listservs.
Des cares a lot about listservs. It's okay.
Why do you care about listservs, Des?
I mean, mostly I care about listservs because I saw that one that's been pretty toxic lately is dying, and I was like, hey, maybe we should try something new. Ta-da! I can do this. I have the resources. And then I got in trouble for that somehow. I don't know. That is not my beef. My beef. Let's discuss my beef.
You have an AFSP beef, which is connected.
So, here's my beef.
This.
Behold my beef. Did you know that suicide has an economic impact? That people who kill themselves out of despair or whatever the fuck they're killing themselves about cost us money. Jess, can we see your shirt, please? Wait, not me. Her. No, not me. This one. This shirt. Capitalism is a death cult.
I wore the right shirts today and I didn't even know it.
You did. I am so fucking angry about, like, every time I think about this shit, I see red. There's my banner too. So I discovered that. I don't know what the fuck. Oh, I was poking around to find out about one of my other beefs, which Jonathan knows about. That suicide prevention summit thing where we're like, we have one black speaker. She's down at the bottom. It's cool. Everyone's fine. Just
it's
put her
cool.
in the back of the bus. Over there. So I yelled a lot about that, and somehow that led me to the AFSP website on the same day. It was July 14th. I've done the research. And like, of the 4 main stats on the AFSP website, that one was the 4th one. It was like, suicide costs money. And I'm just like, okay, if an attempt survivor comes to this website and sees that they're going to cost people money, it's like, if you're into the interpersonal theory, like, that's fucked up. There's some burdensomeness that I have perceived. And if you're a loss survivor and you're looking for information because you just lost somebody and you see like, oh, this person I love just cost someone a bunch of money. Like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck kind of capitalist garbage is that? Like, I understand that data points are data points and that it's worth collecting, but like, maybe don't put it on like the front page of your website. Like, we need funders. We need maybe to talk about these sorts of things with the medical field, blah, blah, blah. Keep the information. Don't fucking publicize it. Like, think about who your audience is for just 1 second and don't put up stupid statistics. Like, it doesn't make you look smarter. It makes you look like a fucking asshole. Your whole organization, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, which is, you know, the content that goes on websites, the sort of front-facing information, says a lot about organizations. And when you have organizations that are signaling to funders, hey, if you give us money for this, then you will be able to say to your people, we saved money. We saved money for society. Like, this was a good investment for society. And that in and of itself is a horrible message. But I think it's it's a really, really important notice about how organizations signal to big dollar folks. Yeah.
It's really, really popular in the like workplace suicide prevention space too, to talk about like saving organizations money. That's how training is done. And it's a really common sort of way of talking about all of that. It's really unfortunate. Foucault would have a lot to say about
Michelle.
Always bringing in that Foucault.
Well, you know, it's like money and power and production. Like, that's what we're talking about. But
really cool parties.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just really, really unfortunate that we talk about suicide in terms of like dollars and like death numbers and stuff instead of talking about it in terms of liberation. Because like, it's so easy to do, like, for me, it's so easy to think about suicide prevention in terms of liberation and then like make really good decisions around like suicide and working with suicidal people and all of that. And it's just so hard to do that when you're talking about lives in different ways than that.
Yes. But I think we can. Are we done with? Am I the only one with beef left, or
yeah, you're the only. You're the last beef.
Okay, so I think we can end beef corner on a good note. I have a good note about this. This 69 billion fucking bullshit. I complained enough that, hey, that statistic's not on that website anymore. That's fucking weird.
What? Dude.
Super weird.
What? Yeah.
It's gone.
Wait, AFSP took it down?
They sure did.
That's amazing.
What?
Yeah, you haven't been paying attention to my text messages, fucker.
Ouch.
No.
Ouch.
Yeah, you. It's fine. She's busy.
Dude, I was working.
So
Capitalism. Oh, sorry.
Capitalism.
People were
It's a
having
death roll.
crisis, Des. People were crisising all day.
Well, they are costing us money. Okay. So, I first complained about it on July 14th. And the Wayback Machine crawled the AFSP website on July 21st. The statistic was still there. The next time the Wayback Machine crawled the AFSP website on August 1st, that statistic was gone.
Wow.
Very soon after, I did some complaining. Then I complained again the other day and got their attention. And their VP of research reached out to me, and she has confirmed that their 2021 materials will not include that fuckery. Inevitably, there will be different fuckery, but that
there'll be more fuckery.
Won't be there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Because they're still doing Project 2025.
Right, and that's your jam. But that feels like a really big win for me and my internet yelling.
That's fantastic.
My internet yelling usually doesn't result in anything near that. So usually people are like, I'm not following you anymore.
I don't think that's true.
Every week I get a report that's like, all these people stopped. They don't like you anymore.
Why are you doing that to yourself? Don't pay
I
attention
don't know.
to
You
that
told
shit.
me about this app and then I put it on my phone and now it tells me things.
The tweet snap thing?
Yeah, it just tells me stuff. Des told me about it.
Oh,
now
I don't have that.
You were the one that gave it to me. It wasn't that one. It was some other one. But it's
I like that I told you about it, and I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You told me about it because you were like, I'm sad because these people don't follow me on Twitter. And I was like, what is this shit? And then I downloaded it, and now I can't make it stop.
Well,
and anyway.
I figured out how because I don't like to know that people don't like me. It makes me sad.
I don't mind. I'm like, fine. I can't tell if I'm like happy when certain types of people stop following me or mad about it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. A lot of complex emotions over here. There were some other questions I want to ask. We've got like 4 minutes left or something, unless we go a little over. But can we talk about social work and the value around self-determination and how that's in conflict with the use of force treatment and policing, and how somehow in suicide prevention, we're really not talking about this in major ways, really publicly, even despite like all of the stuff about policing that's happening in the rest of the world right now?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll just say that I think one of the things that's really important about, defunding the police is that, 988 is going to need money. And if we're going to have, if we're actually going to make some equitable transfer, defunding is one of the first and best places to look. I think for social workers, being involved in these coercive systems, if the purpose is to actually help people who are struggling for whatever reasons, right? Des, you were like, and you want to die for all sorts of reasons. Handcuffing somebody, forcing them into a car, forcing them, locking them in an emergency department, all sorts of things that inevitably involve some sort of law enforcement. There's no place for that. There's no place for social work to be involved in that. If we're really actually doing what we say we're supposed to be doing, which is honoring the dignity and the worth of the person, self-determination, then we got to use our skills and our ability to focus on the feelings and do all those sorts of things to actually address what's happening. It doesn't work in a 9 to 5 clock, and this is part of the issue, right? Is that we have people who have to go home to their kids. They have second jobs because their social work job doesn't pay enough, and they can't be late or else they get fired, right? So, like, I recognize the practical limitations of the system, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying I'm saying for the record that social work has no place in being involved in law enforcement, especially when it comes to suicide risk.
So I think, like, it as a general statement, that's like really important. But then on the practical side, it's about, like, how do we disentangle mental health work and policing, because we have entangled them a lot. And I think that's where people get stuck, is that we're, like, not willing to do the work to disentangle those things because there is a financial loss involved for the mental health community as well. Because if we're really believing in, like, ending policing and decarcerating or abolition, psychiatric incarceration's got to go too, and there's a lot invested in that as, like, a method of intervention, even though we generally as a suicide prevention community aren't like, that's the best way to support people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can, it's all connected, right? Psychiatric incarceration, the role of the child welfare system in being a pipeline. I mean, we can, we have 2 minutes now, but like, like there are so many pieces that are connected. And I think that one of the challenges that folks have been, or one of the things that have been challenging folks, particularly this summer after, George Floyd was murdered and there was this sort of racial uprising and reckoning, is the acknowledgement and recognition that you can't just chant defund the police and then go back to being a mandated reporter and think that you're sort of ethically in the right, like that there are all of these pieces, and it's very messy. And I think one of the pieces of messiness, honestly, is that Jess, you said generalities, but the devil's in the detail. And I think all of us have seen people who have been substantially harmed in every one of these systems, and we have also seen people and know people who've been helped in these systems. And so disentangling that and saying, I honor and value you as an individual, and you were helped in this system, but I'm seeking to abolish this system. And I don't know that the alternative would have been better for you. That's an ethical dilemma right there, and something we need to grapple with. And we're not. Parts are, but we. Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part of doing the work that I do, is, like, I go to work every day. I'm looking at every welfare check, and I do a lot of work to make those happen as little as possible in the organization that I work for. But, like, every day I'm participating in that, and it is. But we can't look away from that either, right? Like, if we're going to try and work in this system, we have to, like, look at those ethical problems, and we have to be aware of the ways that we're participating every single day, or we can become, like, blind to it, and not recognize the way that we're participating in the oppression of either our people or the people we're supposed to be serving.
Right.
Yeah, but that's part of the problem. So, as a current student, we've got the code of ethics. We talk about self-determination. You read it and it's gone immediately. Like, it's infuriating because I think about that code of ethics every day, because I'm in this to continue to be a person with lived experience. So I'm learning all of these things, thinking about, how's that going to affect me? How is that going to affect my friends? And shit as simple as role play an intake session was mind-bogglingly infuriating, because you have to walk someone through informed consent, and the templates we were given came from NASW, and there was one that was about teletherapy, and it was essentially like, if you're suicidal or psychotic, you're going to need a higher level of care, and I'm going to have to release you from confidentiality or whatever. And then the other one said something about just being suicidal, and it's like, okay, can we back up? Why are you not telling me the difference between informed consent, mandatory reporting, TerraSoft reporting? Why are you not having me look at the Pennsylvania mental health law, which does not indicate anywhere that a suicidal person must be hospitalized by a clinician? That's all agency policy.
Yeah.
Why aren't we learning this shit? Why are we not picking apart, what does it mean to be suicidal? What does it mean to be psychotic? These aren't questions that anyone in these programs are asking. So fuck self-determination. Like, we are not even there yet. No one is considering the people they're serving. And so I am the most obnoxious social work student on the entire planet.
Yeah. Well, it's like, so this is the stuff where like, I want to, like, as someone who's been like told I like lack insight into my own, disease, and things like that. It's just like really infuriating how little insight we ask mental health providers to have, into the way that they're practicing. And like, that's, to me, like, that's what we really need, is like people who can practice with deep insight, and who can be asked to change their perspectives and asked to reflect differently about them. And we don't really have a system for that, at least not on a large scale, right? I think there are absolutely individuals who are doing things in that way.
Well, this is one of the things that I'll say is a limitation of social work. The master's degree is 2 years of
not long enough
full-time coursework. And, I oftentimes critique the field of suicidology for being dominated by psychologists.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I give props to psychology programs is that, they're 4, 5, 6 years. And so you have time and the expectation that you will dive into these issues that in social work, the assumption is that you'll dive into them upon graduation. And, we can talk about the fact that I think they're, psychologists as a profession, 4% of psychologists are Black versus, 21% of social workers. And so we can talk about what does it mean to have to pay for 5 years of schooling or to be in there versus 2 years, right? In order to be sort of seen as a professional. And again, it gets complicated, but because of that, these questions or these issues you're bringing up, Des, which are spot on and 100% absolutely should be talked about and interrogated and addressed. And Jess, what you talked about, asking the provider to reflect and to know themselves, right? Isn't something that social work programs typically do. I mean, I know there are some.
You get a little bit of it, but not enough.
But, and it's usually in sort of like a field seminar thing where you you talk about a client that you worked with. They sort of, Harry Aponte, who worked at Philadelphia Child Guidance Center with Salvador Minuchin, took over. He developed this person of the therapist training, which is taught in family therapy programs. And it is exactly that. I mean, it is the person of the therapist. You dive deep. I would love for that to be sort of integrated into social work.
Yeah.
But who knows if that'll happen? So
lots of room for growth.
By the way, I sound like I hate social work. I am really enjoying my social work program.
Des loves social work too hard. It's really what's happening.
With my enrichments that I'm bringing to it. I'm enjoying it with my enrichments.
I love hearing about your enrichments from afar, Des.
I'm having fun and also crying a lot.
Oh, okay. So that sounds like every social work intern I've ever had, though. Like, so much processing.
We don't have to do processing.
What? I feel like that's all I did with my social work interns for years. I mean,
I don't have to do that.
That's a good thing, right? I think there's good things about doing processing. Like I just said, insight's important, but it was a lot for me.
My supervisor's like, oh, you want to yell about a thing? Okay, here's a meeting. We're going to do it. It's going to be great. Like today I was at the Suicide Prevention Task Force for Montgomery County, and they did that AFSP bullshit. And I was like, the whole time in the chat box. Like, here's a citation for this. Here's a citation for that. This is fuckery. I can't. So we have fun, but they're still crying.
Oh, Jonathan, is there anything that you didn't get to say that you need to say?
We need
burning
to
statements.
I hope nothing's burning on this poor man.
Since the topic is social work and and suicide and stuff, I do want to say that there have been a handful of social workers in the academic realm that have been carrying this torch for a long time. Back in 2006, Sean Joe wrote an article saying, like, where is social work in this field, in this topic? Like, what is the deal? And and that article was really important in, again, pushing the field to be like, or social workers to be like, what are we doing? But we have folks like Stacy Friedenthal and, even psychologists like Julie Searle, who's at, a school of social work, at AAS. Amy Culp is a social worker. We have Keita Franklin.
Is she?
Yeah, she is.
Annie's now.
Yeah,
Cool.
Keita Franklin is a social worker. I'm a social worker. Like, so there are social workers involved. And so I want to tip my hat to these folks and acknowledge that oftentimes when social workers are in the field, they're not recognized as social workers by default because of the myth of what a social worker is. And so I do think that, with 800,000 social workers out there, and social workers being the sort of the primary providers of services to people who are suicidal, that addressing these issues in social work will make the biggest impact in the field of suicidology, just because of the sheer numbers of social workers and the reach, the fact that we're literally everywhere. So I appreciate you inviting me to talk about this and to start to unpack some of this. It's just been awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
I'm glad you came. Also, the lack of suicide coursework in social work programs is fucking shameful because of all the things you just said.
Boom.
Fucking shameful.
Exactly.
Join us next time on Suicide and Stuff for the election horror show. And also Shelby Rowe, who is going to be cooler than whatever.
Oh my God, we're doing that on election night? That was a bad plan.
Maybe we want to move it to a Monday or a Wednesday.
I didn't even think about it. Shelby, we're going to talk. Unless you just want to cry.
I am down to do it. It just might be a weird one. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. We really appreciate your time. This was awesome.
Yeah.
There's a million more things to say. We'll have to have you back again.
I would love to.
also believe that is true, that we have to have you back. Hold on, I'm trying
We
to
could
stall.
talk about like kids and lists. There's so many other things, you know?
So many background.
Hosts? Can we talk about hosts?
We can talk about hosts.
I have to just give a shout out to my wife, who just had she had an article, she had a letter published in, was it Archives of Sexual Health, on that she did with her participatory action research that she does on HIV prevention and sex workers, and
So hosts?
really looking at the needs to address health in the pandemic, specifically around sex work. And so just want to give that shout out.
That is awesome.
Super cool. I love participatory action research.
Yep.
Very cool. I'm excited about that.
Good. That's awesome. Good job, Randy.
Yes.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Good night, y'all. Thanks.
Oh, wait. I didn't even get to talk about my shirt. Look at my shirt. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I want it to have a question mark after die, but Des won't let me.
Fuck out of here. Goodbye.